Imagine the internet shuts off. Not slows down, not partially fails, not regionally disrupted. It stops, and it cannot be turned back on. The cables are still there, the servers still exist, phones still light up, but the routing, the authentication, the naming systems, the backhaul, the cloud coordination, the connective tissue that allows modern life to synchronize, goes silent. This is not a story about inconvenience. It is a story about dependence. What happens to a country when the system it uses to coordinate finance, food, healthcare, transportation, and governance disappears permanently? What follows is not a movie version of collapse. It is a systems timeline. What degrades first? What holds longer than people expect? And what a society is forced to rebuild when recovery is no longer an option? The most important thing to understand is what the internet actually is. Most people think of it as information, websites, social media, streaming, search. In reality, it is coordination. It is the invisible layer that times deliveries, verifies identity, reconciles payments, routes logistics, synchronizes inventories, and connects institutional decisions to physical actions. When that coordination layer disappears, physical systems do not instantly vanish. Power plants do not evaporate. Roads do not crumble. Food does not cease to exist, but the rhythm between systems breaks. The country doesn't fall apart in a single day. It desynchronizes. On day one, the dominant experience is confusion. Most people assume the outage is temporary. Many institutions initially behave as if they are riding out a storm. Electricity continues to flow in most places. Tap water continues to run. Radio and broadcast television remain available. Police, fire, and ambulance services still respond. The physical world still looks normal, yet the failures begin immediately inside the systems that depend on constant connectivity. Financial markets halt trading or suspend operations because they cannot clear transactions at scale. Electronic payments fail. Card readers stop authorizing purchases. Many ATMs stop working because the network that verifies accounts is unreachable. Businesses that rely on cloud-based tools lose access to payroll, scheduling, inventory management, and communications. Hospitals feel it fast. Modern healthcare is deeply networked. Electronic health records, lab and imaging systems, pharmacy management, insurance verification, and supplier ordering often rely on internet-connected services. In the first day, hospitals switch to contingency workflows, paper charting, manual checklists, and rationing of non-critical procedures. They can still treat patients, but the throughput drops, and the fragility is obvious to everyone inside the system. Food remains on shelves on day one. There is no instant starvation event, but replenishment has already been interrupted. The supply chain hasn't stopped because trucks vanish. It stops because coordination vanishes. Warehouses cannot confidently dispatch. Stores cannot reliably reorder. Fuel deliveries become harder to schedule. The country absorbs the shock, but barely. By day 7, the illusion of normality breaks. A week is long enough for people to realize this is not a temporary outage, and it is long enough for just-in-time systems to show their limits. The modern American food system is engineered for efficiency, and many large urban areas operate with only a few days of inventory. Under normal conditions, that's a triumph. Under permanent network loss, it becomes a vulnerability. Shelves thin, then empty. Refrigerated goods spoil when supply patterns and maintenance operations become inconsistent. Some stores cannot restock at all. Others restock unevenly, creating the familiar pattern seen in real disruptions, not universal absence, but chaotic distribution. Fuel becomes inconsistent in some regions because allocation and scheduling systems falter. Healthcare shifts from strained to crisis standards. Emergency departments remain open, but elective work stops. Diagnostic capacity declines where equipment depends on network systems or cloud services. Medication access becomes uneven as pharmacy supply chains fracture and verification systems fail. Hospitals return to paper triage and prioritization, and the question becomes not can we deliver modern healthcare, but how do we preserve life with limited coordination and supplies? Government remains present, but it slows. Agencies fall back on radio networks, analog phone lines where they remain functional, satellite communications for critical functions, couriers, and face-to-face coordination. There are continuity plans for this, but the issue is scale. Without high-speed information movement, administration becomes slower, more local, and more inconsistent. At 1 month, the situation shifts from disruption to institutional degradation. The central question is no longer technical, it is organizational. Modern institutions assume constant connectivity. When that assumption fails permanently, the problem becomes redesigning how decisions are made, verified, and executed. Economic activity contracts sharply because transaction systems are degraded. Many businesses cannot operate without networked payments, ordering, and coordination. Others operate partially, but with reduced efficiency and increased error. Benefits distribution slows and becomes uneven, not necessarily because governments refuse to act, but because verification and coordination systems are impaired. Tax collection, regulatory compliance, and national-level visibility degrade. The country loses its ability to see itself clearly in real time. Food insecurity rises, especially in dense urban areas where people are most dependent on highly coordinated supply chains. Healthcare becomes regional. Some areas stabilize, others degrade. The disparities begin to widen, and they widen quickly. Public trust erodes, not always in intent, but in capability. People may believe government is trying, while still seeing that government cannot do what it once did. That distinction matters. It also explains why local governance becomes more important. When the national system can't coordinate at high speed, communities lean on what they can touch. Local officials, local networks, local suppliers, local relationships. Three months is the hinge. By 3 months, the situation becomes irreversible. Not because society collapses, but because restoration is no longer the plan. Institutions stop preparing for recovery and begin redesigning themselves for a world without persistent connectivity. Food systems partially stabilize, but unevenly, because physical geography becomes destiny. Regions with nearby agriculture, rail access, navigable waterways, or ports fare better. Regions dependent on long-haul trucking coordinated by digital systems fare worse. The country begins to function like a patchwork rather than a unified synchronized machine. Government shifts from continuity mode into emergency governance. Temporary measures harden into semi-permanent structures. Rationing frameworks become formal. Paper identity systems expand. Verification returns to human processes, slower, more local, and more vulnerable to inconsistency. Authority doesn't disappear, it diffuses. Local authorities gain discretion because they are the ones who can act in real time. Healthcare settles into a stark equilibrium. Emergency care persists. Life-saving interventions remain prioritized, but chronic care degrades, preventive medicine recedes, and the healthcare system becomes more about managing acute crises than sustaining long-term health. The ethical focus shifts under pressure, moving toward population-level survival rather than individual optimization. The economy stops breaking and starts restructuring. Cash becomes dominant again. Informal markets expand. Barter increases where currency access is uneven. Trust networks replace platform networks. Inequality becomes geographic in a way that is hard to reverse. By 6 months, waiting ends completely. The country adapts because it must. The economy stabilizes at a lower level, with different winners and losers. Some industries vanish. Others re-emerge in analog or semi-analog forms, using closed local networks and manual verification. Supply chains shrink. Regional production becomes more important. Fuel becomes a strategic resource managed through rationing, prioritization, and controlled distribution. Inventory systems return to ledgers and human oversight, not because people prefer them, but because they are workable without global connectivity. Government does not collapse, but it decentralizes. Federal authority remains, but operational capacity shifts downward, because real-world action happens locally. The most functional areas are those that combine resources with leadership and social trust. Where trust is low and resources are scarce, instability rises, not necessarily as constant violence, but as chronic disorder, opportunistic crime, and persistent black market activity. This is not total collapse, it's reversion. At 1 year, the United States still exists, but it is a different country. Population shifts accelerate away from regions that cannot reliably supply food, water, and energy. People move toward places with stable resources and functioning local governance. The economy continues, but with slower trade, physical documentation, and long delays. Education becomes overwhelmingly in-person. Research slows, not because knowledge disappears, but because collaboration and computation are constrained. National power projection weakens. The military remains capable, but logistics becomes the limiting factor. not manpower or technology. The country becomes more regional, more manual, less interconnected, not medieval, but unmistakably post-digital. It is important to be precise. Society does not instantly descend into anarchy. Government does not vanish overnight. Civilization does not end. What fails are systems built on the assumption of perfect, continuous connectivity. The internet is not merely entertainment or convenience. It is the coordination layer of modern life. Modern societies are not fragile because people are incapable. They are fragile because systems were optimized for efficiency rather than failure. Redundancy exists, but often only digitally. Physical resilience was traded for speed. If the internet disappeared forever, the story would not be sudden collapse. It would be gradual unraveling, followed by adaptation. The United States would survive, but it would be forced to remember something fundamental. Society is not defined by platforms, networks, or code. It is defined by people and by their ability to rebuild systems when the invisible ones fail. If you found this analysis useful, consider subscribing. This channel explores what happens when systems, on Earth and beyond, meet reality. Until next time, stay curious.